All right. Welcome, everybody, to Standing for Truth. My name is Donny, and I am your host and moderator for tonight's much anticipated debate between Wade the Wizard and Dr. Dino. This is a continuation of our Wade the Wizard versus Dr. Dino debate saga. So, technically speaking, this is round 5, but I don't think we've had a debate between you two gentlemen in at least a year. And so the hype is real for this one. I think it's a fantastic way to wrap up January, a great start to 2024. Now, specifically, what we are debating is the question: is evolution a valid scientific theory? Wade, let's get acquainted. It's been a little while since you've been here. And so I wanted to ask you how you been, and also a little bit about yourself, and if I'm not mistaken, your new YouTube channel.
Hello there, everybody. It's me, Wade the Wizard. I've been good. Last year I was busy with moving to New York. Moved in with my girlfriend. We met in the summer of 2022. And so last year I was moving across the country from Utah to New York. And I would love to promote my new channel. As you can see, my name is my name in the. Am I pointing to that correctly? Anyway, Wade Robbins for POTUS, and the link is in the description. I'm running for president of the United States for 2024. I gotta get my promoting out there, but I've been good, and that's about it.
There we go. Okay, I appreciate it. I look forward to watching your first presidential debate. Maybe this will be a warm-up for that, taking on Dr. Dino himself. And so, Wade, good to have you. I appreciate the intro. I do have your YouTube channel linked in the description box for people to check out. Kent, my brother, great to have you back as well. How you been? And also a little bit about yourself.
It's good to be back. I'm Kent Hovind. I've been an old-fashioned independent Baptist preacher now for almost 50 years. This May will be the 50th anniversary of me getting ordained. I taught high school science and math 15 years, and for 35 years now, I've been an evangelist teaching on science and the Bible. I believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. God made everything in 6 days about 6,000 years ago, like he said. And evolution is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the world. It's not a science. It's not a theory. It's a religion. You have to believe every bit of it. Nobody ever sees any of it happen. So I like defending the Bible. It's debate number 343 for me tonight. You can see all of my stuff on drdino.com, D-R-D-I-N-O. If you want to talk to me, 855-BIG-DINO. Wait till after the show. I won't answer during the show. Okay? Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate the intro. Debate number 343 and debate 5 with Wade. The first 4 debates were a hit. You know, people have enjoyed them. They've gotten lots of good feedback and views. And so I'm personally excited for this one. And I know the audience is as well. And so what we are going to be doing in terms of format tonight, just to get the audience on board with tonight's debate, is we've got a series of points we want to touch on. And so Wade has a presentation for us. We're going to take one point or one topic at a time. Wade will kick off each round with a brief presentation. We'll give Kent equal time to respond. We'll have a little free-flowing back and forth per topic, and then we'll move on from there. That'll probably take about an hour, and then we're going to get our awesome audience involved with some audience Q&A. And so please, if you got a question for Wade or you got a question for Kent, then send in those questions. Make sure you're tagging me, though, at either Donny or at Standing for Truth, and keep them on topic as much as possible. Again, the topic being, is evolution a valid scientific theory? Let's get some good questions in here, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, Wade, we're going to throw it over to you for your first point for tonight's debate. Go ahead.
Right, sounds good. Let's see. So I'll do a bit of a kind of an overview, and then we'll jump into my first topic. I thought this would be a little fun. It's maybe a little silly, but
Are you looking to screen share, Wade? I should have asked you.
not yet. Not
Okay,
yet.
you just let me know. You just let me know.
The introduction. So, yeah, as science makes predictions, I decided to, I just feel like Kent Hovind is so predictable that I predicted how he would respond to each of my talking points, and I put that in a sealed envelope. You can see there. So yeah, after the show, maybe we can take a look at that and see how close I was to my predictions. So yeah, let me go ahead and present. Here we go. Now, do you see my full screen? You don't see any like other.
Just full screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So yeah, debate. So the topics I hope to cover, we're going to talk about kinds produce similar kinds, biostratigraphy, thermodynamics, design, and I should have time to cover the flood ERVs. So first of all, I'm going to be using the more rigorous definition of science, the one that is accepted by the scientific community, and that is science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained. I'm not going to be using the old archaic definition, which is essentially a synonym for knowledge, which is what Kent typically refers to. Also, just as a reminder, the definition for evolution is the change in the heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations, which we can systematically study the structure and behavior of these physical, these attributes in the world through observation, experimentation, and the theory of evolution against the evidence obtained. So you might say that evolution is, in fact, science. Religion is the belief and the worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god or gods. And even Kent agreed that religion is not considered a science. And yet he still calls his organization Creation Science Evangelism. So the first point we're going to discuss is that kinds produce similar kinds, or we're going to look into that because this is, I was having a conversation with Donny, and he said that the best evidence opposing evolution is that kinds produce similar kinds. This is what Kent typically says. We see a wolf produce a wolf. We never see a wolf produce anything other than another wolf. And yet you believe that somehow a terrier and a greyhound and a German Shepherd and a Shih Tzu and a poodle, all these different dogs, they're all related to a wolf. But how is that possible? Because all we've ever seen is a wolf produce a wolf. Kinds produce kinds. Well, fortunately, science is more in depth. It's more rigorous than just observations. If I were to observe the horizon, if I were to observe Earth, then I might conclude that Earth is flat. But when we do experimentation, measuring, testing, things like that, we know that Earth is round. So when we look at a wolf and we do more than just observe it, and we do tests and experimentation, we'll see that each biological life, they reproduce, there's mutations and selection, which is the definition of evolution. It's the change in heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. And this direct observation and experimentation and measurement of evolution paired with centuries of the scientific knowledge paints a pretty clear picture that all the diversity of life came from common ancestor. Yeah, so let me do this. Is it back onto? Okay, so Kent typically says that kinds produce kinds, and that's what we would observe. We see that wolves produce wolves. But if we were to actually do some experimentation and testing and measuring, we would see that that's not actually true, that all biological life reproduces with variations, and then those variations are selected for through natural selection. Kent will probably go off on about something about there's a limit, and we'll see. We'll get more into that later, but essentially there's no evidence or line of reasoning that suggests exactly what that limit is or how we define that. So I'll turn it back over to Kent.
Wade, thank you very much for your introductory point. Time-wise was basically 5 minutes on the dot, so I do appreciate it. Now what we'll do is hand it over to Kent. Kent, take equal time to respond, 5 minutes, and then we'll do some back and forth discussion on this first topic. Kent, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Well, science for years has just meant knowledge, and he even said in his intro, science is knowledge that we obtain through observation, experimentation, and testing. Okay. Where's the observation of any animal produce something that would be considered a different kind? I think a dog and a wolf are the same kind of animal. They got, four-legged, four-wheel drive, don't have hooves. They got a tail on the back, nose on the front. A 4-year-old would know a dog and a wolf are the same kind. And most of the varieties that we're seeing of dogs being produced are selected by humans for some particular reason. Dog breeders want a fancy long-hair dog or a short-hair dog or a stupid dog like my wife's pug. So that's still a dog, and it's still the dog kind. It doesn't prove it's related to a horse and a banana and a pine tree. This is where you guys, atheists, just go crazy over this. You see variations like the different kinds of dogs you showed and say, wow, that proves dogs are related to mosquitoes. No, and you show that family tree with all the things going back to a common ancestor. That's not science. That's a bunch of lines on paper. So I think science is what we know. It's from the Latin word "seer," and it's gained by observation, experimentation, and testing, exactly what he said. And religions are not considered science. So that's why evolution is a religion, and it's not a science. Evolution has nothing to do with science. Now, I like to study science, and we want to use the scientific evidence as a means of evangelism. So we named our ministry Creation Science Evangelism. We use science to evangelize people, to get them saved, bring them to heaven. So science is knowledge gained through study or practice. That's what it's supposed to be. Now, you mentioned, dogs produce dogs. I think that is intuitive. It's all we've ever seen. And you may get a big dog or a little dog, but you said there's no evidence of what the limit is. I don't know exactly what the limit is for dog size. Right now, they've got them nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder, and they've got little bitty ones. This guy here, who was that? I forget his name now. Rationality Rules. Who's that guy? I don't remember. Anyway, he says all the dogs came from a wolf, and I would agree with that. It's no secret. Most breeds of dogs have the specific traits that they do because humans have been interbreeding them, selecting them. And some from Europe, North America, China. I don't know. He's right. But that's the limit. They're still dog. Dog, wolf, coyote probably had a common ancestor. God said they'd bring forth after their kind. But you evolutionists want us to believe that all the kinds of animals have a common ancestor, which is simply not science. And you showed your family tree there. This family tree, typical propaganda, it's a bunch of lines on paper. It's not science. To draw a human connected to a pine tree, or a shark connected to a fern, or a starfish, or an octopus, that's not science. Nobody sees that. Nobody's ever seen an octopus produce a non-octopus. You may get a different color, different size, but they're still the same kind. All I'm saying is this family tree kind of stuff they put in the textbooks is nothing but propaganda. It is not science. None of these lines should be there. They have a human with a line going back to a mollusk and a worm. So, Wade, I guess I'll ask you, are you related to did I already ask him one? I asked evolutionists I debate what you're related to. Let's see, last time I said, Wade, are you related to a snail? You got it right there on a family tree. Do you still believe you're related to a snail? I mean, have a common ancestor with a snail? I would say you're welcome to believe that, but don't call it science. And sure, don't make everybody pay to have that taught in science class. That ought to go in a religion class in a private school for anybody dumb enough to pay and come learn it. This stuff is not science, it's propaganda. So all we see is hummingbird, 366 kinds of hummingbirds. Probably had a common ancestor called a hummingbird. It doesn't prove we can draw a line between a hummingbird and a human. That's not science. So I'm just pointing out, I agree with you that evolution is based on observation, experimentation, testing. Do the testing, Wade. Make a dog produce something that anybody would consider not in the dog family. I defy you to do that. Dog breeders have been making varieties of dogs for a long time, and so far, all they get's a dog. May get some strange looking ones, some big ones, but they're always a dog. So I think you guys, here's the limit right here so far. World's record, smallest dog, let me get him here. World's biggest dog so far is 343 pounds. That's a big dog, okay? And the world's 3'8". Smallest dog right there, a toy Chihuahua, itty bitty teacup Chihuahua, pretty small, 3.8 inches tall. That appears to be, that is the world's record, and I'll say probably the limit. So 4 inches tall versus 3 inches tall. Do you think they'll ever get a dog as big as Texas or 8 miles tall? I think we would say all the experimentation, expensive, deliberate experimentation shows us dogs produce dogs, and there's a limit. I don't think they're going to get one 20 feet tall. There are animals 20 feet tall, like a giraffe, 18 something, okay? Why don't they get a dog that big? The fact is there's a genetic limit to the dog size, and it's always considered the same kind of animal. But you guys will use this kind of stuff right here, like you tried to do tonight in your opening, to make kids believe that dogs are related to bananas. Your family tree there you just showed, right? Look at where it has the cow right next to the hummingbird on that chart you showed. Do you believe a cow and a hummingbird have a common ancestor billions of years ago? That's not science. That's all. Go ahead.
Okay, Kent, thank you very much for that response. That was 5 minutes from the both of you. I do appreciate it. Now we're going to move into a little bit of dialogue on this specific point and first topic. Wade, let me just unmute you. And since Kent just ended with his response, feel free to start off this discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, so generally, Kent kind of contradicts himself where he says kinds produce kinds, but also kinds produce varieties. So they're not necessarily the same kind, so they produce varieties. And then there's really no evidence or methodology as how to define these limits. And I'm not talking about a dog the size of Texas. That's absurd. What I'm talking about, could a bear and a dog be related? Or could a wolverine and a coyote, is that within the limits? But that would violate your kinds producing these same kinds, whatever that means. But also, the dogs, all the different dog breeds, they don't bring forth after their, if I'm interpreting the Bible correctly, it says they bring forth after their own kind. It doesn't say, oh, well, if we, artificially inseminate this dog with that dog, they're not reproducing on their own. They're not you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just so amazing that this is your best evidence that from your observation, it seems like there's a limit, but you can't really define it. You don't have any evidence. You don't have any methodology. You don't have any really anything to go off of. So what do you have to say to that?
Okay, Ken, go ahead.
All right. I found your chart that you used a minute ago. Put me up full screen. What happened here? We froze? Oh, okay. This is the chart you used a minute ago. It shows a cow, a hummingbird, a frog, a fish, and a cat, all going back to a common ancestor. Would you consider this chart that they show to the kids in a public school textbook that you showed a minute ago, would you consider that to be backed up by science, or is this just some artist's conception Somebody just decided to draw lines connecting. Do you believe a cow and the hummingbird and the frog go back to a common ancestor? That's what your chart you showed. Do you believe that chart's true?
Well, so I'll touch on this real quick, but Donny, I'd like to, like in my opening, I just want to make sure we hit all those topics, like kind of do like one rebuttal and then like a whatever, but I don't want to have like just this.
Yeah, no worries. We'll just do 5 minutes roughly of discussion between each topic, then we'll move on.
Real quick about this, like where you take a ladybug and a cow. Okay. The tree of life is a lot like a tree where we have one trunk, and as it goes up, every time there's a branch, the branches are as similar as a wolf and a coyote. They're very similar, very within reason. And then what you do, Ken, to mislead and make it seem impossible is you take a branch way over here on this side of the tree and you say, how could this possibly be related to this branch way over here on this side of the tree? But if we trace back these small, every time it's just a small step, just a small different diversion. But let's let me present.
Well, let's do this, Wade, just to be fair. Let's allow Kent to respond. Then we'll go to your second topic for you to present, if that sounds fair. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you claim they are small changes, and the little branches, they branch off here and then branch off a little more and branch off a little more. This is never observed. We always see a limit. There are now, I think, 500 varieties of tomatoes that farmers have selectively bred. Some do better in acid soil or alkali soil or warm climate, cold climate. They have now, I think, 12,000 different varieties of apples or whatever the number is. There's a lot of them. This is all from selective breeding by people deliberately trying to accomplish something for their particular climate, usually for financial reasons to, grow more. That's what's happened with the dogs. They try to get a variety of dogs people want to buy. There are cows, and 450 breeds of cows that probably had a common ancestor. That doesn't prove cows are related to birds. But you have on these charts that you want us to all to pay to teach the kids that a cow and a bird have a common ancestor. I just say that's not science. We don't observe any of these changes that would even begin to change a cow into anything else or an amoeba into anything else. Amoeba have a pretty short generation time. I don't know what it is for amoeba, but there are quite a few bacteria that have a generation time of 8 hours. Get born, grow up, get married, have babies in 8 hours. You can see 3 generations in one day. We don't ever see them do anything except produce bacteria. But you want to put a bacteria or a protozoa at the bottom of your family tree and have all the life forms at the top. None of these branches represent science. You said, and I agree, science is observation, experimentation, and testing. Do some testing. Get a whole bunch of amoeba or protozoa or bacteria, single-cell creatures, and turn them into a whale or a fish or a shark again, or a human. It doesn't happen. And your answer is going to be, well, we don't have enough time. Well, that's my point. That's why it's not science. It's not observable. Science, where we can observe, experiment, and test. You can't test or experiment for billions of years, so you have to believe in it. That's why evolution is something you believe in. It's a religion, nothing to do with science. Go ahead.
Okay, let me jump in. Kent, Wade, appreciate that first back and forth on topic or point number 1. Wade, let's throw it back to you for point or topic number 2. If you'd like to screen share, go ahead.
Okay. I guess
biostratigraphy. Yep, I do see that there.
Right. So bio is the biology, the biological life, and stratigraphy is the layers of the earth. Biostratigraphy was actually discovered before Darwin released his book, but it was considered one of the first and most powerful lines of evidence for biological evolution because it clearly shows a progression of life changing over time. Now, Kent said that why the animal fossils are sorted. So I want to point out that Kent does admit that there are layers that are sorted into layers. But his reasoning is that this doesn't happen, or I mean, this does happen because of habitat, mobility, intelligence, body density. So we're going to talk about those real quick. But I want to point out, he also said that clams would generally be found at the bottom because they're already at the bottom. But also clams are found at the top of Mount Everest. So I don't know, are clams found at the bottom or the top? Anyway, let's talk about habitat. And habitats, they vary on a horizontal plane. So they'll be different as we cross across the earth. But they don't change on a vertical. They don't stack vertically. They don't change vertically. So I have no idea how habitats that change on a horizontal plane would affect the vertical sorting of the layers. Mobility, really don't understand. There's no logical argument that would say, being better at climbing or running would help you escape a torrential, a tsunami of flash flood. Every time we've observed a flash flood in nature, everything dies. It's terrible. Okay, so intelligence is kind of hard to quantify. Scientists, so what we've done, science has taken the brain mass and compared it with the body mass, and so we can do this with all sorts of creatures, and we can even do this with fossils, because we can take the brain size of the fossil and compare it with the body size. But unfortunately, there's really no correlation. There's a number of different exceptions where you'll find something smarter in a lower layer and something less intelligent in an upper layer. There's really no correlation to why this would make the layers sorted. So body density is the amount of mass in a unit of volume. It's kind of maybe not intuitive, but creatures with similar anatomy will have a similar density. So the muscle, bone, and so this big guy, he might have the same or a very similar density to this little guy. Also, I don't know if you know this, but rocks, they're more dense than biological life, maybe with like the exception of pumice. I don't know. But why don't we see all the biological life on the topmost layer? That doesn't make any sense. Also, we don't really, there's, again, no correlation between like body density and the sorting of the layers. So these are the reasons that Kent provides as to why the layers are sorted. I'll leave it at that, and yeah, turn it over to Kent.
Okay, thank you, Wade. That was 4 minutes on the dot. I do appreciate us keeping it to one point and one topic at a time. Before I hand it over to Kent, I will remind the audience that, yes, we will be having an audience Q&A when we're done discussing each topic. And I'm all caught up on questions. Excellent questions coming in already. Okay, Kent, we'll hand it back to you. You've got 4 minutes. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. The Bible says in the last days there would be scoffers who would be willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood. Okay. Wade assumes that it was a tsunami and it was a flash flood everywhere. What if the water came up slowly? What if it took 3 months to cover the world and drowned everybody, or 5 months? What if the tide going up and down kept getting up and causing the back and forth movement? When you started talking, I flipped this sand toy over and already made about 30 layers in just a couple of minutes, 4 minutes while you were talking. Moving the layers of the earth that we see, the geology, and I taught earth science 15 years, there's no question there are layers to the earth. There's no question there's a little bit of sorting, not much, but a little bit of sorting to the fossils. What does that prove? Well, maybe the buffalo are all buried together because the buffalo tend to live together, okay? They herd together, stay together. Maybe clams aren't found with birds very often because they don't live with birds, okay? They live in a different habitat. So this geologic column that you guys believe in, this is your Bible, by the way, and you showed the picture yourself. And how can you say the layers are different ages? I keep asking without ever getting an answer. If the top layer is younger, where did it come from? Are layers being added from outer space? Is that how the layers are forming from space? If you're just moving it from hither to yon, that's not changing the age. If I shuffle a deck of cards, that doesn't change the age of the cards. Is the top one now younger? Whoa, look at that. Ace of spades, 1 out of 52. Okay. So no, you guys think this geologic column was invented out of clear blue sky. There is no geologic column anywhere. It doesn't exist. It's fiction. The layers were formed from the sideways movement of the water back and forth during Noah's flood with the tidal pumping. If the earth were covered with water, no continents to interrupt the tide would become harmonic. You can do the physics class on that. The harmonic tide would go up and down 200 feet. Today it averages about 5 feet up and down. If it came up and down 200 feet, where's all the water coming from to fill that big bump? Sideways. Moon's gravity is sucking it in from all 4 sides. And from the east, it's always sucking it in at the same speed the earth is turning the other way. Well, at the North Pole, the earth is turning 0 miles an hour, but at the equator, the earth is turning 1,038.6 miles an hour. If the water was going sideways to keep that bump full because of Moon's gravity, going sideways at 1,000 miles an hour, that's going to cause enormous stratification. You can shake up a jar with water, sand, clay, rocks. It'll sort them into layers in a few seconds in your hand. Is the top layer younger? No, they're all in the jar at the same time. How could the top layer be younger? Where's it coming from? So my point would be, there is no such thing as a geologic column. The layers are not different ages. And your point tonight was geostratigraphy. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, running through all these layers. How can you say the layers are different ages when you have trees connecting all of them? There's one in Yellowstone they fence off so nobody steals pieces off it. Petrified trees standing up. There are hundreds of, maybe even thousands, but certainly hundreds have been found all over the world. Petrified trees in the vertical position. Up in central Alabama, there's a coal mine. A friend of mine works up there, Dr. McDonald. He said, we got a bunch of them coming through the seams of coal, sticking up into the rock above. Or sometimes they go through 2 different seams of coal. He said, we got the Blue Creek formation of coal in the Mary Lee. I got trees connecting them. He said, dead trees only going to stand around for a couple of years, not millions. The layers all had to be formed in 1 year, like Noah's flood would do. Just the tidal pumping. Noah went through 880 tidal changes during that one year. That would make the water go back and forth, 880 times. Huge volumes of water in some places. It depends on the topography of the land underneath, but you can get all kinds of features. Watch the video, Experiments in Stratification. Wade, the layers are not different ages. The geologic column does not exist anywhere in the world. Hate to burst your bubble. There is no geologic column. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Kent, Wade, thank you. That was 4 minutes from the both of you. Now we'll hand it back to Wade. Feel free to provide a response or rebuttal. Go ahead.
Well, this works. Let's see. I mean, wow. Where did the layers come from? I don't know where this is. Sorry. Well, I just wanted to point out one thing about Specimen Ridge. Let me look at this. Share. Boop-a-doo. So the problem with Specimen Ridge, which kind of disproves this whole flood idea. Essentially, a forest grew. So I don't know how many layers. There's like 13 layers. Maybe you know better, Ken. But there's a number of different layers where each layer we find petrified trees. So what essentially every geologist who's ever studied Specimen Ridge, what they propose happened. A forest grew. So this is many eons of time. A forest grew. Then there was some volcanic activity or landslide nearby, which deposited some layer. And then many years went by. Another forest grew, and then it was deposited on. This kept happening. It was like something 13 times or something. Entire forests don't just like wash up into place with all the trees planted. So I don't know how, like, what your explanation would be for Specimen Ridge.
Kent, back to you.
Okay, very good. Specimen Ridge is an example. I think there are 27 consecutive layers that have been documented in Specimen Ridge. Again, I would say the tidal pumping. Noah's flood would do that. Just the tide going up and down is going to make multiple layers. During a flood, trees, of course, can float for a while in the flood, and you get petrified trees standing up. And in Specimen Ridge, you notice all the tree trunks that are sticking up, they only go a short distance. Most of them are broken off as if they were in a catastrophe like the flood. And very few of them, if any, have roots. They were ripped out of the ground, almost like a flood would do. I've got pictures of Specimen Ridge here somewhere. But there's not time for a forest to regrow because they would have roots down in there. There's no roots on these things. They were ripped off. So it's really studied. There it is, Specimen Ridge. 27 layers of forest have been broken off roots and extend through many layers. They did not grow there. They were transported there by a flood. And a flood going up and down.
Where did the layers come from, Kent? Did they come from outer space?
No, as the water goes up and down with Noah's flood, the water's going sideways, redepositing them in layers. You can make it happen in moments in your hand if you buy one of these things.
All right. I'm not going to buy one of those. That's fine. I did want to point out with your little sand toy, Kent. Yeah, that one right there.
Sure.
I don't know that you've ever done this experiment, but if you could take clay, soil, gravel, sand, whatever, and then also add in some leaves and some twigs and some other biological life, and then shake it up, I have a hypothesis that all of the plant life is going to end up at the top. So why do we see it sorted throughout the layers? Why do we see plants at the very bottom layers?
Okay, if there were a flood, like the Bible says, and the water's going up and down every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes, the tidal change, then between high tide and low tide, there's a lull where the water's not moving sideways as the earth spins around under the moon, and so the sand and clay settle out. I live in the middle of a gravel pit, 140 acres, an old gravel pit, and you can come here and see gravel, sand, clay, gravel, sand, clay. It's predictable. I could predict if we dig down over a certain area, we're going to hit gravel, and then we're going to have sand underneath, clay. It's predictable. When they came and drilled our well last month, they drilled down. The guy said, now I should be hitting sand or clay. And sure, we got the samples. We're making a display for our science center here in Lenox, Alabama. Come see it, showing exactly what they went through. Every 15 feet, the guy would take a sample, set it aside. We put it in a jar. We made it a table to show kids that they drilled through these layers. Gravel, sand, clay. It's predictable that Noah's flood would do that as the water's going up and down. And by the way, all the gravel around here is rounded, like it's been through a rock tumbler, because it was being shifted back and forth by the flood water going back and forth. And yes, you're right. Generally, organic material, plants, grass, etc., are going to land on top after each tide. Then when it's calm for a few hours, the sand and clay bury that layer. Then another layer is going to form. We have 7 layers of gravel that go from here to North Carolina, 500 miles, probably all formed in 3 days by the tidal pumping up and down. So yes, you would get consecutive layers of coal, and then layers of dirt, and then another layer of coal, all from the trees that buried in Noah's flood. There is so much coal in the ground right now. If you took every tree in the world and squeezed it under, they can make coal in 20 minutes in the lab. If you took every tree in the world and pressurized it into coal, you couldn't make all the coal that we have today. So their argument is it took millions of years. My argument would be no. The world before the flood was mostly habitable. Today it's mostly underwater. So it was a different world that got buried back then. And all that coal formed from 1 year in Noah's flood. I got stuff on that somewhere here. So I don't believe that layers came from outer space. I believe the layers are shuffled back and forth, which means they're all the same age.
So,
what happened? Donnie, we're black here.
Hello?
Oh, can you see us, Kent?
I can now, yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Wade.
I wanted to ask Kent real quick about, there's a tree, it's actually in Utah, it's an aspen tree, or a clonal colony of trees. It's called Pando. It's one of the largest organisms ever found. But it was recorded, I just had it. It was like Oh yeah, 9,000 to 12,000 years old, the estimate. So like right off the bat, the lower end of the estimate is well past your young Earth model. And we've talked about this before, and you said that the global flood wouldn't kill trees because I don't know, but the problem is that if we look under Pando, under this tree, so Utah's at a about 7,000 feet of elevation throughout the state, 8,000. And under this tree, there's all these different layers. So somehow, this flood was going about like back and forth, adding these layers. And then this 2,000, 3,000-year-old tree is like floating on this enormous landmass, boop, sits down. I don't know. We just like, that's such a silly story. Anyway, I don't really want to get too off topic and like get into these tiny little details. I'd rather just move on, but I'll allow Kent to talk about how Pando happened.
Okay, well, thank you. One topic at a time. And you talk about a silly story. All the animals in the world coming from an amoeba. Now that's a silly story. Okay, your family tree is a real silly story. But during the flood, trees can be ripped out, float for a while, and when the flood goes down, they can hit ground and reroot and grow again. Or a flood can cover trees and they survive the flood for a few months. See, Noah was in the ark for a year. That does not mean every square inch of the world was covered for a year with water. The purpose of the flood was to destroy all the wicked people, and it did that except for Noah's family on the ark. But petrified trees standing up, running through all these layers, are a pretty clear indication that the layers are not different ages, that's for sure, not by much. In my model, the layers are different by one tide. And each tide, with the water rushing back and forth to fill that huge, it'd be a harmonic tide, 200-foot tidal change if the tide wasn't interrupted by continents. If the earth were just covered in water, the tide would go up and down 200 feet. Google harmonic tide. Well, if the tide's going up and down 200 feet, that water's rushing back and forth to fill that bump every 6 hours, 12 and a half minutes with tidal change. So yes, it could make a layer of trees, and then when it's calm, sand and clay settle down, bury them, hold them there. Next tide might bring in another layer. So you can get 27 consecutive layers in Specimen Ridge. None of them, the trees have roots. They were ripped out, redeposited, another layer covered them. Then maybe 2 days later, 5 days later, layers came by again. All the layers in Specimen Ridge are easily explained by Noah's flood. They're not explained by evolution. Why don't these trees have roots on them? I'm sorry, you're simply mistaken. The layers are not different ages. There is no geologic column. So this point you made was about geostratigraphy. Start at the beginning. There is no geologic column. Doesn't exist.
Okay, I'll jump in real quick. Kent and Wade, I think we went back and forth on that topic of biostratigraphy enough. If you wanted to move on to topic or point number 3, Wade, feel free to do so. And if you needed to screen share, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move on. Maybe I'll make a note and we can come back on some certain things later, but
definitely
some little details. Yeah, and this will be interesting because Kent did mention this a little bit before. So I want to talk about thermodynamics and how it relates to fossil fuels and a very old Earth. So laws of thermodynamics, there's the conservation of energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed. Also, ever increasing entropy, or basically we get a loss of energy. More simply put, if I put a certain amount of energy into a battery, I can only ever get less than the energy that I put into the battery, right? That's pretty obvious. We all know that. Coal is a lot like a battery, and when we burn it, we get that energy out of it. And coal, or fossil fuels, get their energy from plants. Of course, we all know that plants get their energy from the sun. Plants give it to the coal, and we burn it, we use energy. So we have this kind of trickling down of energy, and each time it's less and less. Okay, so if we were to know the rate of energy from the sun, the amount of energy per time, and we knew the amount of energy that we've used with fossil fuels, then we could figure out exactly how much time this process took. And fortunately, we've been meticulous at recording every terawatt hour of gas, oil, coal. We know very well just how much fossil fuels we've been using, and also there's very good estimates as to how much remains. So we take our equation, rate of energy from the sun, we rearrange it so we solve for time. We take our amount of energy from fossil fuels and divide it by the rate of energy from the sun, and we get way more than 6,000 years. So let's see, I think, yeah, let me stop that. I want to, it just like I guess my question is like, how did this happen? Because, you know, we can't really increase the energy from the sun, the sun input, because that'll just cook the plants. And even if in Ken's imaginary world where like the entire world is covered with a forest, if we check the math, it's not even in the same ballpark. We're not even talking about 100th of the required information. So like the plants grew up faster. I don't know. We're kind of limited by the mechanism of the sun. And so like, I guess God made this chocolate chip cookie of the earth with the fossil fuels in it, but then why did God do that? That's just silly. So I'll hand it over to Kent, and he can tell me why I'm wrong, I guess.
Okay, Wade, thank you for that 3-minute opener on that specific topic. Kent, we'll give you equal time, 3 minutes.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm glad you showed the laws of thermodynamics. I taught physical science for 15 years. Where did the energy come from for this Big Bang? What exploded? You think all the stars, all the energy, all the stars are burning, and there's a lot of energy being consumed by all the stars and our sun. All that energy was contained in a dot smaller than an atom.
If you could have Kent stay on topic.
In a minute. This European Space Agency. The universe grew from smaller than a single atom to bigger than a galaxy. So your religion would teach that all the energy was contained in a dot smaller than an atom or some small amount like that. That's not science. That's a religious belief. You can't see that. So the first and second and third laws of thermodynamics prove the evolution theory wrong. You yourself showed that everything tends toward disorder with entropy. I agree. But yet your family trees show everything getting better, starting from nothing, getting material from nothing, which is the Big Bang, which doesn't happen. It's imagination. And then you want to have this increase in go against the law of entropy. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen. It's not science. I don't care what you believe. You can believe anything you want. But I wish you guys would stop calling evolution a science. It's not. It's a religion. Now, God did not make the fossil fuels in the ground to fool us. I think all the fossil fuels, oil, coal, natural gas, all formed during Noah's flood, except what man has made since then. They can make coal in the laboratory in 20 minutes under heat and pressure. They can make fossils in just a few minutes, or a couple hours anyway. Let's see. Fossils. Fossilization. Popular Science did one just a few months ago. Making fossils in just a matter of a few days. Completely petrifying something. I think Noah's flood is the only explanation of all the fossils worldwide. And you mentioned clams on top of Mount Everest. I agree. Mount Everest wasn't there during the flood. At the end of the flood, the Bible says the mountains arose, the valleys sank down, the fossils were left stranded on top, but they were living at the bottom where clams always lived, in an ocean, okay? And many petrified clams have been found that are closed. They were buried alive. So I think the flood's the only logical explanation of this. So, and why are you fighting so hard against the Bible 6,000 years? It's not part of the debate. The debate is, where's the evidence for evolution? Is the evolution, let's see. So, but I know you guys, your answer to your religion of how did this amoeba turn to a human is billions of years. I think we could prove it's not billions of years old if you want to go that way on another debate sometime. I do that every Friday night on my channel. Doc Dino, we get Genesis Baptist Church back soon. A couple days, yeah. And I'll go to drdino.com and you can see all my channels are there. So the fossilization took place rapidly because of Noah's flood. All the layers formed in 1 year from tidal pumping up and down. There is no geologic column. But you get that 6,000 years bothers you guys because that is what the Bible says. And that's what a lot of scientific evidence shows. We're covering every Friday night. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kat. Wade, let's throw it back to you for a response. Go ahead.
Okay, so just to reiterate, your explanation as to why there are so many fossil fuels is because you think in 2,000 years, the Earth was so flourishing that it just doesn't happen. Kent, you're violating the laws of thermodynamics. There has to be millions of years of biological growth, or the sun has been pretty consistent for all the time that we've measured it, the amount of energy that comes out. We know there's entropy, there's loss in the system. This is just so silly. To just say I think it happened. That's not an excuse. There's no evidence for that. So I don't know what to say in response to that.
Okay, throw it back to Kat. Kat, go ahead.
Well, I'm glad you're finally admitting there are some things that there's no evidence for. There's no evidence of any animal ever producing offspring that would change them from an amoeba to a whale over trillions of generations. It doesn't happen. There's no evidence for how everything could be fit in a dot smaller than an atom, which is what they want me to pay to have the kids taught that. There's no evidence for that. You guys can believe it if you wish, and I think you do wish to believe it, but that's not science. That's all. I'm just pointing out science where we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. And yes, I believe when God made the world, he made it to be inhabited. There were much more of the earth was habitable. Today, 71% is underwater, 10% under ice caps, 10% under deserts. Only about 3 to 5% of the whole world is habitable today. If when God made it, it was mostly land and everything grew faster and grew bigger, they find fossils of trees that are huge. They find fossils of just about every kind of animal that's huge by today's standards. They find fossil grasshoppers 2 feet long. They can't get 2 feet long today. They don't have enough air pressure to breathe through their little spiracles. Insects breathe through their skin. So I think the evidence is overwhelming. There were lots of gigantic plants and animals on this world that were buried rapidly, causing them to turn to either coal, natural gas. They can make oil. They can make oil in the laboratory in 20 minutes also. You can take carcasses of dead animals and squeeze them under pressure and produce oil. There's a factory I got slides on it somewhere here, where they're producing oil in 20 minutes in the laboratory from just dead carcasses. They take all the stuff from slaughtering houses. They throw away the entrails. They're going to get the meat. They take the parts they don't want to turn into beef. They can't turn into beef. And they, under heat and pressure, turn them into oil in 20 minutes. It's science. You can do it. So I think the flood is what made the oil, the natural gas, and the coal. You guys believe all the fossil fuels came from a dot smaller than a period. Here it is. I'll show you. The universe grew from smaller than a single atom to bigger than a galaxy.
My question, we're kind of getting off topic. My question was how do we account for all of the fossil fuels in just 2,000 years before the flood? And you don't have a good answer for that. So let's just move on.
My answer is, before the flood, the world was mostly habitable. But today it's 70%.
Even if 100% of the earth was filled with this forests, every square inch, forests, we can't account for the amount of fossil fuels that we have burned and we're still digging up.
Well, do you believe all the fossil fuel we've dug up, all the coal? There's a coal seam in Wyoming 300 feet thick. You believe all the fossil fuel, came. This textbook says, European Space Agency, the universe grew smaller than a single atom. You think all what became the trees And the animals, the whole, everything was fit in a dot smaller than an atom. Do you believe this?
This is just a whataboutism. You're just pushing it back on to me. My question was asking about why, because you claim that the Earth is 6,000 years old, and I'm just proving that I'm asking how that is, and you're not providing any evidence. So let's move on to design, please.
Okay, unless you had anything you wanted to respond to, Kent, we can move on to topic, the next topic, 3 or 4. Wait, if you'd like to screen share, feel free to do so.
Design, yes.
As you're doing that, yes, I do see all the questions coming in from the audience, and I am all caught up. I appreciate you tagging me. You got some great questions so far. Okay.
Let's see.
Wade, go ahead.
Yeah, so generally, as Kent's defense against evolution, he'll typically take some man-made object and say, look at this pen, this man-made object. It was clearly designed because of my intuition or something, or we have examples of other things being designed. But yeah, so I want to talk about, like, there's got to be a better systematic way of defining the way things are designed, because I saw this waterfall that looks just like a woman wearing a dress, but was that designed or was that natural? And then I saw this horse with right here on the rear end, it looks like a fox. Was that designed or was that natural? That I need a way to better, like, determine, right? Was this designed? Is this natural? Did someone come in here and chisel away these rocks to be all hexagonal? And, was that natural? I thought this was interesting. So one of these pictures is a beaver dam, and one of them is just a natural log jam, just debris. And I think this one down here is the beaver dam. But I don't know, like, there's got to be a way that I can tell, if I look at a snowflake, was this designed? Was this natural? What's my methodology? So in engineering, this is one design process where we start with the problem, or we define the problem, we do research, we specify the requirements, we create a solution and build a prototype, and then we test that and see if it met the requirements or it didn't meet the requirements. And if it didn't meet the requirements, we can have this iterative loop, this feedback loop, and so that's like kind of a design process. So for me, I would say that we can determine if something is designed either by having an example of that certain thing being designed, or if there was a decision. Basically, like, did the beaver decide to put the stick here or not? But excuse me. So I created the evolution design process to try and illustrate this observation in science. So we see that we observe that all biological life will reproduce with mutations or very slight variations, and either those mutations will be not as beneficial or more beneficial for natural selection. If they're more beneficial, then it's the survival of the fittest. They get to reproduce again, and there's mutations and so on and so on. So natural selection, well, evolution, the mutation part, that is random, but then we have natural selection, which is essentially the blind watchmaker, as Richard Dawkins would put it. It's making these decisions. So I guess my question to Ken is, like, we take any object. We're going for a walk and we see that thing. How do we determine, is that natural, or was there a design? Or I guess more specifically, was there an intelligent design behind this process?
Okay, that was about 4 minutes. Thank you, Wade. for that, we'll hand it back to Kent. Let me restart the timer. And Kent, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think the burden of proof is on you to prove it was not designed. I mean, you're saying everything came by natural selection. Here I have a 16-penny nail. This is made of iron, which is a naturally occurring substance. We have a lot of it here on our property in this gravel pit, iron ore. Is there any way lightning striking the iron ore could produce a nail like this? This is obviously designed. It has the gripper cleats in here. It has the flat head to pound on, has points to go in, and it's made of a certain tensile strength, so it won't bend except under certain pressures. It has a limit. It's designed to do a job. I think anybody with one eyeball and one functioning brain cell would say this was designed. This cannot have happened by lightning striking the iron ore. So most of it is just simply intuitive. You look at it and say, wow, that had to be designed. It had to be. Now, you asked to mention about a snowflake. The snowflake, it forms at that hexagonal shape because of the water molecules having 102-degree angle. It's an amazing design. If the water molecules had oxygen and 2 hydrogens, which are positive, and they would be repelled like normally would happen, they would go to opposite ends and you get a straight molecule, oxygen with hydrogen each way, and then the water would freeze and sink to the bottom because it'd be solid. As it is, the water freezes because of that 102-degree angle, and then it traps air in between and floats to the top. Otherwise, we'd all die. I think God designed the water molecule to freeze, to be at that 102-degree angle so that the ice would float, so that we won't, otherwise rivers would freeze from the bottom up and nobody would be no life here. So I think the snowflake is a classic example of intelligent design. So natural selection, Wade, I agree. Listen to me. Natural selection selects. It doesn't create anything. It selects. If you went through and sprayed the forest with something to kill certain bugs, a pesticide of some kind, and it killed 99% of them, 1% already has a natural immunity to that drug you sprayed on them or that poison. They then get to take over the population and produce all the babies that survive for the next generation. And you could eventually get a bunch of bugs that are resistant to that particular pesticide only because it was already in their gene code. You selected the ones with that resistance to survive. They will never become resistant to a sledgehammer. You could go around, smash them all with a sledgehammer, and none would survive. Natural selection only selects, but you want to give it a creative power. It does not create anything. And survival of the fittest is generally true, but it's more like survival of the luckiest. The ones that survive are the luckiest generally. But there's a little bit to this idea of fitter. But again, that's something that's already in the gene code. If it doesn't change it to anything. You want to say that survival of the fittest is going to change an amoeba to a whale. No, it's not. Natural selection is going to select the strongest amoeba to survive, and they're going to get married and have baby amoeba. They're never going to turn to a whale with a quadrillion generations. So you guys are welcome to believe this stuff, but it's not science. Science, what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. You said it yourself. Show me the observation of any animal. Now, cells are so complex. If you took all the cells from one human body, you have about 100 trillion cells. Each one contains 46 of these chromosomes, except for the gametes, they got 23. If you unwound one chromosome, it'd be 6 feet long. That's the code to make something in your body. These chromosomes are. If you took all the DNA from one person, stretched it end to end, tied them all together, it would go across the solar system twice. The DNA code is phenomenal in its complexity. There's no possible way this chromosome and DNA code and the replication process, which is mind-boggling, there's no way that happened by chance. You can believe it if you wish, and I think you wish to, and I think you do probably believe it, but it's not science. It's a religion, and I wish you guys would admit it. Go ahead.
Wade, go ahead. We'll throw it back to you. Just make sure to unmute, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. You went so far off topic, I didn't really know. My question is, how do you determine whether something is designed or not? I take this, like, was this designed? Or better example, okay? We're walking along and we see a pile of sticks in a river. And I say, oh, that's just a log jam. And you say that's a designed beaver dam that was designed by an intelligent. So how would we go about determining? And so my further point is, we look at a biological life and we see a, a dog, and you say that's designed by an intelligent creator. I guess really the question is, because like I admit that there is design in evolution, like I suggested, like I showed, it's the natural selection that picks the good mutations over the bad mutations. But how do we know that it's not natural selection and it's in fact a super magical deity?
Okay. Well, I think most of telling whether something is designed or natural is intuitive. If you're walking through a pile of gravel and you see an arrowhead, you immediately conclude somebody shaped that gravel piece into an arrowhead. It is like this iron ore turned into a nail. There's plenty of iron ore. That's not, it's common. But to make a nail, this shows evidence to most people that this was shaped by an intelligent person for a particular reason. Same thing with an arrowhead. It's true it's a natural material like rock or flint or something, but it's been shaped for a reason. Each cell in your body, one cell is more complicated than the whole space shuttle. It had to have a designer. You would agree the space shuttle had a designer, a whole bunch of them. And the one cell in your body is way more complicated than the space shuttle, probably than the whole space agency. And so it's just intuitive. But see, I'm not required to prove that. You guys are claiming it wasn't designed. If you claimed this nail was not designed, nobody designed this nail, I would like to say, then Wade, how did it get this way? What is your scientific explanation? Is this from mutations, natural selection, lightning striking the iron? Burden of proof's on you to prove it isn't designed.
Well, thank logic that science is based on more than just intuition. My next talking point is actually probably a pretty good segue. So I'll just, if that's all right, I'll jump into that.
Yes, sounds good.
So let's see, share screen. Along the lines of design, I want to talk about one design in particular. Now, so I'm agreeing that humans are designed through the process of natural selection. The better traits are favored, and they get to reproduce again, the survival of the fittest. Down here, though, we have a few problems with this design. And really, we could look at essentially any biological life, plant or animal or what have you, and see that there's probably could be a better design, but I wanted to pick humans just for fun. So annual choking deaths in just the US is around 5,000. That number goes up to maybe as much as 120 worldwide. And this is just because God designed our air, food, and water to share the same entrance. It's not a very good design. It's actually a terrible design. Birds and snakes, they have a separate airway. It's much better. Maternal deaths. So just giving birth, hundreds of thousands of people are dying every year. This is a terrible design. I personally would have just had the birth canal come right out of the abdomen. It's not a painful death. This is because, so the reason why there's so many maternal deaths is because evolution favored a large brain, a large big head over a small percentage of maternal deaths. There's 80% of the population struggles with back pain. That's because our backs were initially designed as quadrupeds, but natural selection favored bipedalism over quadrupeds. We only get 2 sets of teeth, our baby teeth, and then when our adult tooth gets knocked out by a baseball, we get it replaced. Also, 5 million people in just the US got their wisdom teeth removed. Just do without it. Like, that's a stupid design. Male nipples, these non-functional nipples, I don't know why we have them from a design perspective. Ken said, imagine the problems like child rape if men did not have nipples, which is, I think, probably the most nonsensical thing Kent has ever said, because problems of child rape do exist and men do have nipples. So why would men not having nipples increase this problem? I don't know. Goosebumps, they don't keep us warm. They don't make us bigger when we're scared. These are non-functional. These are a vestigial trait. 100,000 people in just the United States are getting skin cancer every year, and over 8,000 people are expected to die in just America, in just the United States. Imagine if I designed a car that when it sat out in the sun for too long, it just stopped working and broke down. That's a terrible design. 280,000 appendectomies in just the United States every year. Also, our digestive system can't produce all these essential vitamins. Okay, so there's a lot of different things, like the laryngeal nerve takes indirect path, external testicles, design recall on the foreskin. Foreskin's actually probably a good design, but God asked for that one back. There's an inverted optic nerve that creates a blind spot and general bad vision. There's menstruation, non-mothers, which leads to unwanted pregnancies in teens. There's diabetes, short lifespan, heart disease, male pattern baldness, allergies, inability to regenerate, sinus infections. We can't produce 11 out of the 20 amino acids. Ingrown nails. Our waste outlet is near our genitalia, which leads to a lot of infections and diseases. We need to sleep. That's not a good design. No diagnostic function, only 5 limited senses. There's more, but just in general. I think where did I go? Are you seeing my presentation? Anyway, I give the design of the human a D+. It's not a good design, but it gets by. It gets us by. It does just enough. And that's the way evolution does. Natural selection picks the thing that works well enough. And but if I were designing the human from the ground up, or if God, the intelligent designer, was designing the human from the ground up, like, it's a terrible design. So I'll turn it over to Ken. Yeah.
Okay, Wade, thank you for that presentation. About 4 minutes. And so, Kent, we'll throw it back to you. Argument from bad design. You got about 4 minutes to respond. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Well, I think it's a pretty amazing design. We have an epiglottis, a little flap of skin that goes back and forth to direct the food to either to the esophagus or to the trachea. Whether it's wind, you want it to go in the trachea. Your body automatically does that. Occasionally, there's something goes wrong. Maybe there's a dietary reason where something's going wrong, or maybe just occasional swallowing. You swallow air into your stomach, and then you can burp. So we have a burp reflex that allows you to get rid of if you do get air into your stomach, and we have a choking reflex if you do get food into your lungs. I think it's amazing design. I like mine really well. Would you rather have 2 openings where you can talk and eat at the same time? Okay, some animals have that. I think God designed a variety so we'd all say, wow. General Motors makes trucks and cars. Wow. Some carry a bunch of stuff, some carry a bunch of people. It's designed. They're designed for that. So I think the idea of the choking is a lousy example for evolution. Okay. And you mentioned about wisdom teeth. If man was living to be 900 before the flood came, like the Bible says, as they got older, they would get bigger. And it's about time when you're maybe 18 or so for the last set of teeth to come in. Wisdom teeth were designed for bigger humans. Actually, there are many people who've got a third set of teeth in their life. It might be that if you lived to be 900, you would go through a new set of teeth and they'd fall out and grow a new one every 100 years or so. I don't know. But there have people that just Google third set of teeth. So it could be God designed, like with babies now. They start born with only 20 teeth. As they get bigger and their mouth can handle the space, now there's 32 of them come in. Teeth come in at different times. Perfect timing for the baby as it grows to an adult. So wisdom teeth is an example of great design. Now, the fact that we have problems today is because we're not getting as big as they used to get. So now a certain percentage, I think 50 or 60%, have to be removed. That's not God's fault. He designed it perfect. Man messed it up. You mentioned maternal death. We have bigger brains. Could it be there's been a problem for some other reasons? You've already decided it's bad design. I like to point out, bad design does not mean not designed. It's a poor argument for evolution. There's a pretty poor design, stairway that leads to nothing. There's a poor design. back of the dryer, they had to cut right through to make it. Here's a poor design. You're going to sit on that one? You don't think anybody's going to. How about that one? See, poor design does not mean there is no designer. It means this particular designer was an idiot. There you go. Put the toilet paper on the front. How about that? Poke yourself in the eye when you take a drink out of your cup. That's a little crowded in there. I agree that's a bad design. But that doesn't mean it's not designed, okay? And what we are seeing with this bad design that you claim for the eyeball and the wisdom teeth, etc., we're a copy off 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 a copy of many generations from Adam. I think we're lucky to be alive at all, okay, and able to stand up and talk. There's a pretty poor design, but hey, it works. If you can't marvel at the amazing designs God made in nature, I feel sorry for you. I think the prehensile tail of many animals is amazing. The one scale on a lizard is amazing. The snail, which you think you're related to, it's amazing design. You think all life forms came about by blind random chance for no reason and no designer. I've often said, beam me up, Scotty, there's no intelligent life down here. I think anybody who looks at this with an open and honest mind would say that had a designer. Somebody designed that. And if you can find a flaw, realize this is a copy off a copy off a copy of the original. I bet the original was perfect, designed for its environment. Maybe the environment has changed. Maybe natural selection has created some problems where now they can't survive as well for what they were originally designed for. Maybe they were designed to have greater air pressure and 35% oxygen, like we find in amber samples, 35%. And maybe they were designed for that, and now we only got 21% oxygen and not enough air pressure. So now they can't, maybe that's causing a problem because the world changed because of Noah's flood. But I think there's evidence for design everywhere we look. I marvel at my amazing creator who designed all these things. I don't have a problem saying, wow, that's amazing. Somebody designed that. You really think nobody made that? Nobody made that. Nobody. Yep. I feel sorry for people who can't look at the design in nature and say, wow, God, you're amazing. I love my Heavenly Father. I love worshiping him for what he did. I think it was amazing design all over. If there's a few things that are bad today, that doesn't mean they were designed that way. Either they've mutated in a negative direction, and you want to claim they mutate positively, that's never seen, or they were designed for a different environment than we have today. The world changed. Sorry, I went over time. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent, for that response. Wade, you can either have, we can either do a round of rebuttals on this topic, or you can move directly into your next one. It's up to you.
Maybe we can circle back. I guess I did just want to point out, like, I'm not arguing that all life isn't designed. My last talking point where we talked about the beaver dam, I was talking about how there is that iterative loop in natural selection. But I get my more question, and maybe you can think on this and we'll come back to it, but how do we determine this biological life was designed by natural selection, or this biological life was designed by a supernatural deity? But yeah, so should we?
Kent, did you want a chance to answer that right now?
Well, I think I did earlier. It's pretty much intuitive in most cases. If you're walking through the woods and you find an arrowhead,
intuition
in the midst of the gravel, you know it's designed. I know this has been designed. I can't prove it in every case, but I don't need to. The burden of proof's on you to prove it isn't designed. I don't have to prove it was. I think anybody with one brain cell would say, yeah, that was designed for something. You may find some oddball tool someplace. I don't know what that tool do. Maybe you don't know what it does. Maybe I don't know what it does. Doesn't mean it wasn't designed. So the burden of proof's on you. Prove it wasn't designed.
Yeah, so I guess I'd like to keep things moving, and then maybe we'll, I don't know how much time can we. Oh, hour 20. Let's cover the last two topics real quickly if we can, and then
Sure.
circle back.
Go ahead if you want me to.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sharing. Is this okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So I want to talk about the flood. And for me personally, So like the biggest thing that convinces me that the flood didn't happen, it's not all the evidence that suggests the flood didn't happen, or the abysmal lack of evidence that the flood ever did happen, but it's more along the lines of this idea. And let me try and explain this as best as I can. So, flood. So God had a problem. This is according to the Bible. God had a problem, and generally the humans that he created with free will were using their free will to disobey God's rules that they weren't aware of, something like that. There were wicked people. So this is God's plan. Plan A: spend 120 years to build the world's largest boat that's ever been built. Use, I guess, mind control to help the world's largest migration. So all the animals had to get on the ark. You got to flood the entire earth, murder innocent children, all the plants, fungi, insects. They survive, no problem. You got to hide essentially all of the evidence that the flood ever happened. You got to create a bunch of fake evidence that would suggest that the flood didn't happen. And then you got to figure out the problem of rampant speciation that we've talked about in another debate, and how that's impossible. Then you've got to reverse the migration, have all the animals go back to their place around the earth, and invent rainbows. So that's God's plan for, a couple naughty people. I've got a few other plans that I think were probably a better idea. Plan B: 7 days, God created everything. So just do a hard reset. Just start over from scratch. Plan C: send the angel of death to murder all the naughty people. We know that, in Exodus, God opted for this method of genocide, and when he killed all those children. Plan D: he could just appear, be like, hey, I'm God, and if you don't follow these rules, then I'm going to murder you. Or Plan E: just allow people with free will to use their free will and disobey God. But the funniest thing about the flood, let me stop sharing this. Oh. So generally, like, God was mad about these naughty people, and so he, went through all this rigmarole and pomp and circumstance, but it didn't work. Like, people are still wicked. What a terrible plan. Like, why did God do this plan? Just send the angel of death and get it done with, get it over with. All right, tell me why, Kent. Why did God choose this plan?
Okay, that was just over 3 minutes. Let's throw it back to Kent. Feel free to respond, Kent. You got just over 3 minutes.
Yeah, we got several topics showing. Be a little hard. If you got a better plan, Wade, do it. Make your own universe and do it however you want to do it. I want to see you do it. Okay, I'll come visit. Okay, let's see your plan. Allow people to use their free will. They did. What if somebody of their free will came over and decided to cut your arm off? Should something be done, or is he just, if there's no judgment, does man have a sense of right and wrong to say they shouldn't do that? We should punish them for doing that. I often say, would it be wrong for you to go next door and kill your neighbor's baby and eat it? I think everybody would say, yeah, that's wrong. And I say, well, the lion does it to the zebra all the time. Why aren't you out there protesting, lions, stop doing that? That's mean. You shouldn't be eating the neighbor's baby, the zebra. Okay? So, and people are still wicked. How do you judge wickedness, Wade? If evolution is true, where's your ruler for deciding what's right and wrong? I'd like to know, is it wrong to murder? And if so, why? Why would you say that? Because if somebody murders somebody else, apparently they weren't fit, so the stronger survived. The stronger murdered the weaker. What's the problem here? That's your whole theory. That's supposed to make us advance to a better species. That's what Adolf Hitler did. Hey, the Norwegians and Germans are the highest race. Let's eliminate the inferiors to speed up the evolution process. Hitler and what he did is a classic example of the end result of evolution thinking. He wanted to eliminate the inferiors. I use in my seminar part 5, you can get my seminars on drdino.com, 18 hours for $50. and return it and get your money back. But in seminar part 5, I show how Adolf Hitler was just trying to speed up the process. He had a list he went by. Nordic, close to pure Aryan. Jews at the bottom, kill all the Jews. If he would have finished, he would have gone to blacks. He hated black people. They were next to the bottom of Hitler's list. I showed the list he was using. So that's what evolution thinking does. It's evil. It's not scientific. We don't see it happening. And so people are still wicked. I would agree with that. But exactly how do you measure what's wicked? When the lion eats the baby zebra, is that wicked? It would be for a human. Why not for the lion? Anyway, where's your standard to measure right and wrong? I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Kent. And from my understanding, Wade, you have one more topic, so either we can do a real quick round of rebuttal here on this one, or you can move to your next one. What do you prefer?
Well, it was just, his response was just so off topic. I don't even know how we would get back onto topic. So let's hit this last one real quick. I guess, yeah, I mean, like, I asked, why did God flood the earth instead of some very easy, obvious other solutions? And his response was like, Hitler killed the Jews, and where do you get your morality from? What are you talking about? Like, why did God had a problem? There were 9 people, and that was the best that he could come up with. What a stupid plan.
Okay, let's give Kent the chance to respond then, just to be fair. Kent, if there's anything you'd like to rebut there.
God could have come down and said, everybody die except Noah. The flood left evidence that everybody can see the fossils. Wow, there are fossils all over the world. So the flood did leave evidence. That's why we have fossils. If animals die today, they don't turn to fossils. Where's your evidence for evolution? You want me to believe that all the animals changed into something else slowly over millions of years, but we can't see that. We don't see it happening, and no fossil would count for that. When you find a fossil, all you really could prove is it died. You couldn't prove it was changing to something else. You couldn't prove it's intermediate between anything. So I think the flood left evidence and showed God's clear hatred for sin. And the Bible says next time he's going to do it by fire. I want to get ready for that. I would recommend you get ready. Go ahead.
Wait.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Shoot, I just lost my train of thought. It's a lot of nonsense. Yeah. Generally, I want to encourage everybody who's watching to go do your own research. Do unbiased research. I know this is very difficult, but you got to search evidence that the flood happened and search evidence that the flood did not happen. But it really comes down to, Kent mentioned fossils or evidence that the flood happened. That could be evidence of a local flood or local landslide, but evidence that the entire earth was covered in water, there's no evidence for that. And there's so much evidence that debunks that. But my last point, I hope that we can really get into. I don't know. I don't follow Ken or Donny much. I know.
Wait, let's do this. I just want to be as fair as possible as moderator. Since you've been starting each topic, let's allow Kent a real quick response if you would like to wrap up this topic, and then we'll throw it right back to you for our final topic. Unless Kent wanted to go right to the final topic, we'll leave it up to him. Kent, what would you like to do, brother?
Well, fossils are found all over the world, probably by the trillions. If you want to count diatoms, they're found by the quadrillions. Okay, there's no question. There's a lot of fossils in the ground, and they show evidence of rapid burial and preservation before they could rot. When a fish dies now and washes up on shore, it gets picked apart. You don't find them completely articulated like this. Thousands and thousands of fully articulated fossils are found, meaning all the bones are still in the right position. We get deer hit all the time here in lower Alabama by a car, lay on the side of the road, the buzzards pick it, the coyotes pick at it, and you never find a whole skeleton together after a few days. Fossil tree stumps that are huge compared to today. Something was different. I think fossils are clear evidence of rapid burial and rapid preservation, rapid death. Oftentimes, The fossils of a fish found eating another fish. Didn't even finish its last meal when it got obviously buried quickly. So I think fossils are one of the best evidences for Noah's flood. They're not evidence for evolution. How do fossils form in your religion? How many animals died in the last 100 years? Colonel Sanders killed a whole bunch himself, okay, for making chicken. How many of those turned to fossils? Show me a place where fossils are forming today. I defy you to show me any place where you can find fossils today being formed.
All right, Ken, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the response. Gentlemen, lots of excellent back and forth tonight on these topics. Wade, we got one more topic to go, and then we're going to move into audience questions. And so to the audience, you've got just a few more minutes until we are going to engage your questions. And so, Wade, over to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I was saying, I don't follow you guys too much, but I can't imagine your script has changed much. And typically when people bring up ERVs or endogenous retroviruses, the defense is that, oh, well, this ERV has a function and therefore God designed it or something like that. But that's not the reason that the theory of evolution proposes that ERVs are evidence for evolution. And I just have one picture I want to, oh shoot, hold on, present, share screen.
Now, since you said you guys, does that mean I get to respond too, Wade? I'm just teasing you.
Sure.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Well, so
Go ahead, Wade.
So the reason why ERVs are evidence, just a quick little analogy. You have two programmers, and they are both writing a code, and there's 10 million lines of code, all right? And then their boss comes by, hi, what's happening? Could you actually just add one more line of code, put it anywhere you want, but yeah, just put one more line of code in that code, and yeah, if you could do that for me, that'd be great, thanks. So they put this, and if this is truly random, they put that in their code wherever they put that random part. The chances are 1 in 10 million, but if they copy and paste, then the chances are 0, or the chances are 100% that it's going to be in the same place. So, excuse me, my voice is kind of at the end. Yeah, ERVs are evidence for evolution because with reproduction, variation, selection, evolution is the change in heritable traits and biological populations over generations. Every time a parent has a child, it's essentially a photocopy of their DNA. So that's why we'd expect those ERVs to be in the exact same place. When someone's infected with a virus or an endogenous retrovirus, it can go in 1 of 10 million spots. And so the likelihood that, our fellow chimpanzees and humans have it in the exact same spot is astronomical. Oh, and by the way, we don't just share one common endogenous retrovirus with our chimps. There's over 200 ERVs in the exact same location. Yeah, so I don't know that you've ever, probably go on about it, whatever. Go ahead, Kent.
Okay, thank you, Wade, for that summary of our final topic for tonight. Let me reset the clock. Kent, you got just over 2 minutes to respond. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, if there are similar lines of code in apes and humans, that could prove the same designer wrote them. Your illustration had 2 different designers inserting the code. What if the same God made the apes and made the chimpanzees, made the baboons, made the humans? There's quite a few lines of code necessary just to flex your fingers. The DNA code that tells your body for your brain to send the message down to the flexors and to bend the fingers in a certain way. So you got the tendon and ligaments in here doing all this. I bet the chimpanzees do the same or similar thing. They probably have the same lines of code. The lines of code in Microsoft PowerPoint that check for spelling are probably millions of identical lines of code to Microsoft Word that check for spelling, maybe the same dictionary, because the same guys wrote the code. So ERVs are not evidence for evolution. There's a good article about that if you want to go to icr.org. They've done long articles, many articles on this topic. You guys are claiming the fact that there are similar, what you think are mistakes in the code, therefore nobody made any of the code, which is ludicrous. So if you say the chances are 1 in 10 million of it being the same line of code, the chances are 0 of the code being written at all in the first place by random chance. So some sections of virus-like DNA were shown to be functional. They thought they're mutation and non-functional. Now they're finding out they are functional. They do something.
I said that the function has nothing to do with it.
DNA sequences called endogenous retroviruses are abundant in mammals' genomes. ERV sequence initially got their name because they showed strong sequence similarity to viruses. Okay, hence the name endogenous retrovirus. But it's a DNA sequence. Evolutionists proclaim the animal genomes evolved to their present state in part by repeated infection with viruses initially deemed part of the organism's junk DNA. Now, as they do more research, they're finding there is no junk DNA. Put a kindergartner under the hood of your car and say, take out anything this car doesn't need. He doesn't know what any of it does. It's a matter of man's lack of knowledge. As research progressed with ERVs, it became apparent that many of the genomic features are not junk, but important for the mammal's survival, such as the placental development. It develops through the placental stage, and then they're no longer needed, but it's still in the gene code. It was in the code to make your car, to stamp out the parts for the frame and line them up and rivet them together. But once that's done, you don't need to keep doing that. It's done. So there could be this ERV, this code that they're using, was designed for as it's growing through certain stages, and now that code is no longer necessary. But you need to keep those lines of code for you to make babies do the same thing. So I think your very lack of understanding of what ERVs do, what endogenous retrovirus, and they're not viruses, the DNA code, our lack of understanding of what it does not mean it doesn't do something. Man hasn't understood it yet. We're still in the very primitive stages of understanding all the DNA code. Like I said, the DNA code from one person, unwound, stretched out, tied together, one person's DNA would go across the solar system twice. They haven't even read the whole code, let alone proved how it happened by itself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Wait, I got to point something out. If Kent was guilty of this, I'd point it out to him too. But not once in this debate has Kent interrupted one of your responses or your opening summaries. But that was the third or fourth time you've interrupted Kent while he was giving his uninterrupted response. So please follow the rules that we've laid out and be as respectful and professional as you can. Because Kent was on topic. He was addressing your endogenous retrovirus argument. And so note something down that he says that you disagree with, and then you're going to get an uninterrupted response to respond. Okay, Wade, go ahead. Back to you.
I mean, I started off specifically saying that whether a ERV is functional or not.
Yeah, but Wade, you making that assertion doesn't make it true. And so Kent has every right in his uninterrupted response to make his points, and then you can wait patiently, and then you can respond. Okay, follow the rules. That's all I ask. If Kent was breaking the rules, I'd call him out too. But he hasn't interrupted you at all, Wade. So act like a man. Come on. Go ahead. Feel free to respond.
I'm a beta male, bro. Yeah, so generally I said that they're in the ERVs are in a specific location where, let's say, they're functional, okay? But because they're in a 1 in 10 million chances in the exact same location. So you said, oh, well, God designed it. I say natural selection designed it. But as we saw before, when I asked, how do you determine whether it was God did it or natural selection designed it, you didn't really have an answer. You had my intuition. All of your arguments are just, oh, I think so. That's my intuition. But fortunately, science is more rigorous than I think so.
Okay, Kent, let me throw it back to you. Let me just reiterate something based on Kent's response. Your question is like asking, why do all modes of transportation share engines in common? It's good design. It's common design. That was Kent's response. So you saying he didn't answer the question seems unfair to me as a moderator, but let's get Kent's thoughts on that. Kent, go ahead.
Well, its article shows from Science News they've known for 10 years that the endogenous retroviruses do have a function in the immune system, part of the immune system. So we probably have similar endogenous ERVs to other animals because we face the same problems with our environment. Maybe we both have to fight off a cold. Maybe we both have the same bacteria to fight off. So it's part of the immune system. Let's see. Yes, Utah Southwestern Medical Center. Endogenous retroviruses play a crucial role in the body's immune defense against common bacteria and viral pathogens, researchers found. Retroviruses are best known for causing contagious scourges like AIDS and more sporadically cancer. Research from 2021, switching sides, endogenous retroviruses protect us from viral infections. So I think you need to do more research on this. Retroviruses, first of all, should probably not be called viruses. They're part of the DNA code, and they're part of the antibiotic and other resistance to problems. So they're not evidence for evolution. They're evidence for amazing design. And there's been plenty of articles on this for the last 10 years. So that's not evidence for evolution. And if there was a problem with the code, that would be, following the laws of thermodynamics, degrading. Where's an example of gaining some new information in the genetic code? That would be scrambling up existing information, like a typographical error. How long would it take typographical errors to change a book? Somebody retypes the book to change an English book into Chinese. It'll never happen with mutations. You're dreaming. That's why I say evolution is simply a religion you guys choose to believe in. You want to believe in it because it gets rid of God. And with God comes some rules. Donnie, I am not feeling very well. I'd like to close up here pretty soon. I've had to work hard all day today.
Yes, no worries. Let's wrap it up here. I want to be as fair as possible. There's probably a thing or two you want to respond to there, Wade. So why don't we wrap things up with a 2-minute closing statement or summary from the both of you. And so if there is something you wanted to respond to there directly, Wade, do it in your closing statement rather than us continuing the discussion portion. And so, Wade, let's throw it to you. Take a 2-minute summary or closing statement, and then we'll do the same for Kent, and then we'll go from there.
One thought that, so you mentioned, Donnie, since I'm debating you as well, a lot of cars have engines in them, but some cars have them in the front of the car, and some have them in the back of the car, and some have them in the wheels of the car, or some. The thing with ERVs is like, yeah, they're functional, but it doesn't matter if it's at this part of the code or that part of the code. As long as it's in the DNA, it doesn't really matter. And so it's just curious that they all happen to be in the exact same location. And yeah, there's really no, aside from Kent's intuition, really no way to determine whether it was intelligently designed by God or happened by natural selection. It's almost as if, anyway, the thing with evolution has been on trial for over 160 years. It was presented as this scientific theory, and for centuries, all the most brilliant minds have tried, they've scrutinized it, and they've tested it, and they've examined it, and they've done all this science with this theory of evolution, and they've tried to falsify it, and yet no one has been able to falsify it. No one, not even Kent, has been able to provide any evidence that would suggest that evolution is not true. It is not a good theory. So I'm still waiting for the creationists. Donny published his book about ERVs, but it didn't falsify the theory of evolution. No one really cared about it. No one accepted it. It wasn't accepted into the scientific community because there's no evidence for creation. There's no evidence to falsify evolution. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Wade. Kent, if you would like a couple minutes, brother, feel free to do so. I know you said you're not feeling well, so we can certainly do a power round with questions, but I do want to give you the chance for a closing summary.
Well, no evidence for it. It would not matter. I think there's evidence for creation, just the fact that there's evidence somebody made this ink pen. I don't know who, I don't know where, and I don't care, but somebody made it, okay? I think the single cell in your body is too complex to have happened by chance. So there's no evidence for any animal turning into something else. But you want to have these family trees where an amoeba turns into a frog and a butterfly and everything. There's no evidence for that. So I'll turn it back over to you. Where's the evidence for that?
Okay, thank you, Kent. All right, guys, let's do a power round as we are close to 2 hours anyways, which was the agreed upon time for this debate. And so let me give Kent a minute here to get back. I'll go over some announcements. And okay, well, this was a good debate. I enjoyed it. I don't think Wade and Dr. Dino disappointed. And okay, let me go over a couple announcements until Kent gets.
I would like to open my predictions from earlier, if that's all right. Do we have time for that?
I mean, with Kent not present to respond, we should probably at least wait for him to get back, and then if you'd like to.
Okay. Well, let me say.
It probably would have been good if you opened those in your closing statement. That way, Kent could have his chance.
I'll at least go live on the Wizard Show, and we can open those and kind of talk about a little post show.
Yeah, that might be a better idea. Do your own post show debate commentary, and then that would be a good opportunity for you to give any additional comments, including opening your predictions there. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over some announcements to the audience. We are wrapping things up in January of 2024 with a bang, of course, tonight being Dr. Dino versus Wade the Wizard. And next month, we've got another month full of debates, open mics, presentations, interviews. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so we got several open mics. I'm really excited for this one. John Mackay, Joe Hubbard, they're going to be here for an open mic debate challenge to any evolutionist, any critic out there who wants to join, defending young Earth creation and the Genesis flood. Open mic night on February 22nd to be exact. So mark your clock or calendar on that one. I see Kent is back. And so Kent, for you, let's do power round of questions, and then we'll wrap it up for the night, brother, so you can get some sleep. And so, okay, let's at least make sure I get the super chats in here. So here's a question in the form of a gift, comes in from 21st Century Mind. It's for you, Kent. Psalm 139. You, Lord, have formed and fashioned me in my mother's womb. Was God 100% involved in creating deformed babies, or did God allow Adam's curse to affect the biology of humanity?
I think God created the original people perfect, flawless, and they produced children. And then over time, mutations crept in, and all mutations that have been observed are harmful, fatal, or neutral. Nobody's ever seen a good mutation that adds information. So I think the fact that we're a copy off a copy off a copy off a copy, who knows how many generations from Adam, the fact that we can talk and think at all is amazing. Okay. Get a photocopy machine, make a copy of a page in a book. Then take that copy and make a copy of that. Then take that copy and make a copy of the copy of the copy. You keep doing that about 50 times, you won't be able to read a thing on the page. So we have a genetic code that is phenomenal. It's been passed on from your dad and your grandpa and all the way back to Adam. So I think their mistakes have crept in. All of them have been harmful, fatal, or neutral. Nobody has seen a good one that added information. How did this amoeba grow arms, or protozoa in this case? Protozoa don't have the gene code for arms or eyes or legs or hair. How did that get added to the protozoa? They put these charts in our book and say, boys and girls, the humans came from a protozoa, a protista. It had to add a lot of information. Mutations aren't going to do that. So I think the fact that there are deformed babies today could be from all sorts of things. It could be we are now living in a fallen world, and maybe mutations have crept in and caused all the problems with humanity, not the advancement to humanity. It could be similar gene code, similar mutations in the same spot close kin usually have mutations in their babies if they marry. It could be a nutritional deficiency. Maybe our soil is becoming depleted in certain things. For years, they were looking for the cure for scurvy. 1 million British sailors died of scurvy, and it was a simple vitamin. You're not getting vitamin C. Oh, okay. So they took limes on board. They called them the limeys for that reason. A simple vitamin cured one of the worst diseases in the 17th century, or 1700s. So I don't know why all the deformed babies, but there may be a biological reason. There may be a nutritional reason. There may be the fact that we're so many generations from Adam, we're lucky to be alive at all and talking and thinking. So it's certainly not evidence for evolution. I wouldn't blame God for that. I mean, if you smash your thumb with a hammer, don't get mad at God. You did it. So I don't know all the reasons why, but I decided I'm going to trust God until I find out why. Other people have decided they're going to doubt God until they find out why. Okay, we'll see how that works out for you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. I saw your hand up there. Wade, did you want to?
Yeah, I thought we were doing a power round. Let's do this. Questions, kind of.
Okay. Well, this question probably made it difficult to have a power round. So let's do this. Kent, you got to respond, which means I'll get a question for you next, Wade. So rather than doing the 3 responses per question that we do, typically it's just going to be, hey, question for Kent, question for Wade, question for Kent, question for Wade. So here we go. Question from T-Rock for Wade now. What should chimp and human DNA look like if they were the product of design?
They are the product of design. What do you mean if? Natural selection, there's random mutations in it. There's a process of design. I don't know, maybe they weren't paying attention when we talked about this earlier. Evolution has a design process through natural selection. So what should they look like? They should look like exactly as we should expect them to look like if they were a product of design, because they are designed. Next, power round. Boom!
Okay, thank you, Wade. Next question comes in from Creationist Crybaby, one of your biggest fans there, Kent. Kent, why do all lines of evidence, including population genetics, comparative morphology, artificial selection, fossil studies, studies in molecular evolution, give the same tree of life?
Well, your question starts off with a very obvious assumption that they do give evidence for that. And I would say none of them do. You're just naming a bunch of branches of science and claiming it's evidence. That's not how it works. Show me specifically how you think population genetics would show us that this chart says a human related to a bird, and we both came from a protista. How does population genetics document or help support this family tree? None of those things you mentioned do that. I think all the branches of science point to the evidence, the obvious conclusion. Man had a beginning. The world had a beginning. The world cannot be infinitely old. We know that for all sorts of reasons. It's not infinite. Is there a time limit? There's all kinds of things that limit the age of the earth. Like I'm covering those on every Friday night on my channel. Get all the channels are on drdino.com, our website. Just click one of them and watch every Friday night's presentation. A different way to prove the earth cannot be billions of years old. And removing time from the atheist is pulling out their pacifier. Crybaby, you ought to know about that. We got you up here. So I know that you got to have time or your theory really falls apart quick. I think it falls apart for other reasons too. But so I think your question is invalid because you made an assumption at the beginning that those things do support your theory, and they don't. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kent. Now we got one for you, Wade.
Well, real quick, I kind of wanted to add on that because I had a question kind of along those lines, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Maybe real quick, because all these lines are all these different branches of science. So this was something I was really thinking. We've got all these millions of scientists, geologists, biologists. They all come to the same conclusion that, based on evidence and rigorous experimentation and science, they conclude that Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and all life evolved from a common ancestor. But my question is, why is that? Why do they come to that conclusion? Is God creating fake evidence to test people's faith, or maybe Satan is tricking people? Why do you think nearly every scientist is convinced by, where does all this evidence come from?
Did you want to respond, Kent?
Well, sure. This is called the argument from majority opinion, which is always the weakest argument they have to go to last. Majority opinion means nothing. Okay. The majority of people in China would say, oh, communism's good. And nobody publishes peer-reviewed articles saying it's not good because you lose your head. Or they cut, majority opinion in Iran and Iraq and Muslim countries is, wow, Islam's good. Of course it has to be. How many peer-reviewed journals are there against Allah in Iran? None. If you do one, they cut your head off. Okay. Behead those who insult Islam. How many majority opinion articles, and the majority of Germans follow Hitler? 55 million Germans said Hitler's great. Does that prove he was? No. Argument from majority opinion is the weakest, not even an argument at all. Okay. First place, you're wrong. It is not correct that all the scientists believe this. Thousands and thousands of scientists believe in creation, believe the Bible's true, but their articles don't get published in peer-reviewed journals because they go against the religion of evolution. They outlaw the opposition. So you're
off topic. So like, let's say all the Chinese are communists. They get that idea, this majority of opinion. They get that idea from the Chinese leaders. So, and maybe it's not the majority of scientists. Let's just say 50%, whatever. There's a lot of scientists that believe in evolution, but like, why is that? Who's creating this fake evidence? Or, where's that coming from?
Well, you're assuming there's evidence. I've not seen any. Where's the evidence of any animal producing an offspring that would be considered something different enough to change an amoeba to a whale, like they teach? And is there, if someone tried to publish a peer-reviewed article in Nature magazine and said, look, there's evidence there was a really smart designer behind the single cell in your body, the chromosome, this could not have happened by chance, had to be designed. They wouldn't publish it. They only publish stuff that supports their religion of evolution. So peer review and majority opinion is a lousy argument for evolution. Secondly, even if everybody did believe it, that doesn't make it true. For years, everybody said it's not possible to get a heavier than air object to fly. The Wright brothers said, I think we can. And sure enough, they did. And now we have airplanes. The majority was wrong. I don't care what the majority says. The evidence shows there's a designer, and we were designed for a reason, and we're going to face that designer one day. Wade, you're going to stand before God, and every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. I would like to see you give your heart to the Lord. Now, you don't want to? Okay. You're talked about in 2 Peter 3. Scoffers are willingly ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment of God. So it's up to you. Do what you want. I'll see you Judgment Day in an envelope and seal it. Wade will die and stand before God, and I will get to see him and say, Lord, I tried to warn him. I'll seal it in an envelope. It's coming, Wade. Get ready.
If I see God.
Hey, you both made some predictions and sealed them in an envelope tonight. I appreciate that. Okay, let's, in order to wrap it, there you go. Did you want to unseal one since Kent?
I would love to, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we got any more questions, but. I thought it was quite, yeah. So got our points here. I won't go over all of them. I just one that pointed out, because I had typed this up before I was looking at it. So I said the ERVs are evidence because of location and not function. And as predicted, Ken said, God designed ERVs to have a function. Nothing to do with about why they're in the location that they're in. Yeah, I don't know. Should we go over some more of these, or you can respond to them?
No, that's all I can take for one night. Kent, did you want to respond?
Well, I pointed out that, first of all, they're not viruses, and they're now finding more and more that they do have functions, okay? And the fact that they're in the same location means they're doing the same thing. I think there's a gene code that allows humans to flex their fingers. There's a similar gene code that allows chimpanzees to flex their fingers. And maybe some of those same lines of code to control those muscles allow the bird to flex his claws around a tree branch. I don't know. But that, again, would not prove common ancestry. It would just as easily prove somebody designed this incredibly complex code to allow you to flex your fingers. So it's not evidence for evolution. I don't know how you can claim that it is.
Okay, Wade, you get the last question for tonight. comes in from Taylor K. For Mr. Wizard, what species was ancestral to the trilobite, or did it come about all by itself, kind of like the singularity that produced the Big Bang?
So the definition, I don't want to misspeak the. Let's see. So the definition of evolution is the change in heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. So the ancestor to a trilobite was something with slightly different heritable characteristics. So they reproduced, and they changed. No, singularity, like that's not even, you're talking about like, that's so nonsensical. I'm sorry, that's a terrible question.
Okay. Kent, did you want, I guess since Wade, you responded to the last question that was for Kent, we could have Kent respond to this, or we could wrap it up here. Gentlemen, what would you like to do?
Well, thank you, Taylor, for the question. Come visit Dinosaur Adventureland. You can get on my channel here. We'll put you guys up for a while. Trilobite had an ancestor that was a trilobite. I'd bet $5 on that. And I bet if we could see them alive today, we'd see they always make baby trilobites. No exceptions. None. Never. And
well, there's varieties though, right?
What?
There's varieties. Like it's not exactly a trilobite. When they have babies, there's varieties. You agree that there's varieties, yeah. But there's
I forget how many. I don't know how many varieties of trilobites have been found. Some really big ones have been found, but they're always a trilobite and recognizable as a trilobite. And we can't see their gene code in a fossil, but I would be willing to bet they had a gene code to make baby trilobites. I'd predict that. So if you wish to believe that a trilobite is a common ancestor, well, your geologic column has the trilobite as the bottom one. There it is, bottom center, trilobite. During the Cambrian era. There's no such thing as a Cambrian era. No such thing. No such thing as a geologic column. So they have trilobites evolving into humans. There it is. Proof. They drew a line on paper. That's got to be true. This is pure propaganda. Yeah, Donnie, I'm sorry. I'm fading faster. I need to go, but let Wade have the last word, or whoever you want, whatever you're doing.
Wade, go ahead. Have the last word since the question was for you, and then we are going to call it a night.
Yeah, I mean, again, he often, there's the contradiction that, yeah, there's varieties, or it's like the same kind, but there's varieties. And those varieties, they have a limit, but I don't really have a way to determine what that limit is except for my tuition. Are lobsters related to trilobites? What about insects? Is a beetle related to a trilobite? Like that's the limits that we're talking about. We're not talking about a dog the size of Texas. We're talking about a trilobite, evolving into a scorpion or something very similar, but you're talking about cows jumping over moon. It's just silly. I'm pretty spent with this. It was interesting. A lot of people are going to be able to look back on this and have a great laugh and be like, wow, I can't believe that there are people who believe the entire world was flooded and that was God's best plan to do that.
Wade, be respectful to your interlocutor in your last words, please. Because you know that you're getting the last words, and so you're trying to get as many freebies as you can. I know what you're doing.
Well,
come on, let's go. Be professional. Are you a true professional, or are you just here to troll? Answer the question. Are you a true professional, or are you just here to troll? Yes, answer the question.
Ronnie, this whole thing is a joke. You guys are the punchline of everyone's joke.
The one who's a joke is the one who can't answer any of the challenging arguments to us, but you still don't understand the basic argument to ERVs. Can you present us with a paper right now that shows a non-functional endogenous retrovirus going from non-functional to something as incredibly functional as Kent pointed out? No, don't dodge. Wait, don't dodge. It's a basic question. Show us the paper right now that shows an ERV gaining a function in embryological development. Go. I'll let you respond. Can you present that? Yes or no?
Donnie, you have
yes or no. It's a simple yes or no question. Can you present a paper that shows an ERV gaining the ability to be active in the placenta? Go ahead, answer. Uninterrupted.
I'm not going to do your research for you, okay?
Okay, so wait, the answer is no. So now, like you said, how everybody gets to have fun watching this to see what you said. Well, now everybody gets to see you dodge a basic question on ERVs. I appreciate that. You disrespected me as moderator and host.
The whole body
You
of
think
science.
I'm going to stay?
like,
you think I'm going to stay
you're
silent on
150
that?
years
We're wrapping it up here. This is the last time Wade's on the show. Kent, you got 5 rounds with Wade. He failed all 5 times. So, anyways, we're going to wrap it up, brother.
Okay. Should I say anything?
If you'd like to, go ahead.
Okay. Real quick. He said he can't believe that other people actually believe the entire world was flooded. He believes the entire world came from a dot. That's what's insane. So contact our ministry, drdino.com. All of our channels are up on there. Follow us. Come visit us. They're free. Dinosaur Adventureland, Lenox, Alabama. Thank you for having me, Donnie. And Wade, I'm going to pray for you. I think God's got big plans for you. If you'll open your heart, he'll come in and save you, forgive you, and take you to heaven. That's what we want to see. Thank you, Donnie.
Amen. Thank you, Kent, for your time. You feel better. God bless. Prayers for you. Okay. We'll see you later. All right, everybody. There's another one in the books. Round 1 or round 5. Round 1 was a long time ago. Wade the Wizard versus Dr. Dino. And what a way to end their debate saga. And what a way to end the month. And so, as moderator and host, I will remain neutral and unbiased during my time hosting and moderating. As people know, I have moderated close to 400 debates on all sorts of topics. But the second one of the interlocutors start disrespecting me or my show, I have every right in the world to interfere and to engage the interlocutor that is disrespecting my time, as well as his interlocutor's time. And so, yeah, I don't think I need to defend myself on that, but I will say it's been an interesting month. It's been a wild month. We've had a ton of events. We've had a lot of main events, as a matter of fact, that I want to make sure people are all caught up on. And so just a couple nights ago, we had the much anticipated debate between Anthony Rogers and Sean Griffin. And so this was a must-watch debate. These gentlemen did not disappoint. We had close to 600 live, and so we almost set a new record. Not quite, but very, very close. And it got over 5,000 views in one day. So if you haven't yet seen this debate, please do make sure to check it out. Elizabeth Sullivan. I do appreciate that. Sister. Yes, Dr. Grady McMurtry is coming back, and he will be here first week of March. So usually we have Dr. Grady every couple months for a 2-hour Q&A on all things origins. And so I'm just seeing some of the questions here, and yes, if Wade wants to have a full debate on endogenous retroviruses, I'll do it anytime. He won't do it, but I would be more than happy to. And so Sydney Raptor here, let's address this because he doesn't get it. Where's the comment? Because it's moving quick. I might have lost it. Oh, here we go. Okay. So if Sydney Raptor actually watched the debate, we agreed. Okay, we agreed that we are going to focus on about 6 topics. Wade had 6 topics that he wanted to go through, and he wanted uninterrupted time to go over each topic. He said it would take between 3 and 5 minutes, and then Kent would get equal time to respond, uninterrupted. at least 3 times, maybe 4 times when Kent was giving his uninterrupted response, Wade interrupted. And Wade, because one time I went upstairs to get water and he interrupted at that point, so I couldn't say anything. So in my opinion, he took advantage of the fact that the moderator was gone for 10 seconds. So I let it slide 3 times. But the last time he did it, he had to be called out on it, even if it was Kent, if it was anybody who would disrespect the format like that, I would call them out. And I didn't even call him out right away. I waited 3 or 4 times for him to disrespect the format. And so we had an agreed upon format and structure, and he failed to follow that, unfortunately. But you know what? It's all good, because that was a fantastic debate. And you can watch the previous 4 debates in the description box. I've got them all in the description box for people to check out. This was round 5, and we are working on putting this entire debate saga or series into a DVD set. So once we do that, we'll definitely let you know. But I do think it ended in an entertaining way. And again, I remain neutral. People know that until I get disrespectful. So in a way, I was happy to jump in, and I was given that opportunity to engage Wade and ask him a very basic question on ERVs, and he dodged. He doesn't have an answer, which is why he wouldn't debate me on that topic. And so, okay, continuing on, I'm just going to give a snapshot of what we have coming up, because I plan on in the next couple hours doing a live show and just going over all of the events that we had for January in order to just kind of summarize the month as we move into February. But I want to make that its own separate video. And so real quick, I did just want to give a couple shout outs to debates that we have coming up. We got Anthony Rogers, who's going to be back here. This one's going to be in March, actually. So Andrew Griffin, Anthony Rogers, Deity of Christ Showdown. Does Colossians teach the deity of Christ? Looking forward to that one. End of the month of February, we've got a debate, another 2 versus 2, Protestants versus Catholics. And so I'm just looking at the chat. Sydney Raptor, no worries. I appreciate your feedback. And we welcome all forms of opinions and in the chat from our skeptics and non-skeptics. And so I blog, therefore I am. I appreciate that. My sister, and just kind of looking over the chat. Okay. I think I responded to what I wanted to. And okay, so yeah, right here we got 2 versus 2, Catholics versus Protestants. The last time we did a debate on this one, a similar topic, it was the Assumption of Mary. That one actually holds the record. So when I said that we came close to beating our record on Monday, we had a 2 versus 2 showdown, Catholics versus Protestants. Maybe about a year ago, 8 months ago. Time flies, I'm not sure. But we had close to 1,000 live on that show. So this one's coming up at the end of February. The Immaculate Conception. Is it biblical and ancient? Turretin Fan and CJ Cox versus William Albrecht and Elijah Yassi. And so I'm excited for this one. Again, I gave this one a shout out earlier. I am pumped for this one. 2 of my favorite creationists. 2 of the most well-studied, well-equipped creationists that I know, John Mackay, Joe Hubbard, both very well-rounded, working in the field, geologists. Joe's finishing up his PhD, from my understanding. And so they're going to be here on February 22nd for an open mic that you're not going to want to miss. Defending Young Earth Creation and the Genesis flood. And so to all of the critics and skeptics out there that have wanted to engage John and Joe, John, he had an informal debate with Richard Dawkins years ago, and he did an excellent job. And so for everybody who's wanted to debate these brothers in the Lord, make sure you're here February 22nd and bring your best arguments, and let's have some solid impromptu technical debate with John and Joe. Of course, we're going to keep it professional. And I got to say, I am excited. And last thing I want to say is we just recently hit 4 million views on the channel. And so you guys are the life and blood of this channel. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate everybody sharing the content around to their friends, to their family. And so again, praise the Lord. This is awesome. And we've got a lot planned for 2024. So if you're not yet subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that like button, and make sure to share this content around to your friends and family, because not only is the truth important, but critical thinking is important, which is why we host a lot of debates, because it gets us out of our theological and our scientific echo chambers, brings us into the debate octagon and the debate dojo to discuss these topics in a sophisticated and hopefully professional manner. And so with that, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Standing for Truth is out for now. God bless all. We'll see you soon.